Hello there, Seanorama, Sean Geek Podcast. How you guys doing this morning? Boy, oh boy. I had an interesting weekend. So there's a few things that happened. So we'll just brush on where everything's at. There was a big announcement made 2 weekends ago that we're on the cusp of actually releasing what that announcement is and what it means to the brand between myself, Todd, and Corey. So that'd be Fast Red Fingers, Corey Geek, and Seanorama. Very excited as to what that means. But leading up to that, Fast Red Fingers is the co-host on the Sean Geek Podcast. He's kind of been on the periphery of a number of things going on the Sean Geek Podcast. But I guess more importantly, he's also predominantly on the periphery of a lot of things that I work on. I mean, he's my brother. I've known him for my entire life, obviously. So there's a lot of particular things that Todd and I have worked on over the years. As a matter of fact, yesterday we were kind of going through some ideas musically, just sort of redoing something that was recorded a long time ago when we were all of lesser, well, specifically me, was of lesser musical ability. And we're thinking of maybe taking a song I wrote way back when with Todd and revamping it, revitalizing it, and making it more modern. Because at the time it was recorded, it was very much of its time. But the groove of that song is something that is still there and it's still solid and it's still great. Some of Todd's best guitar work was on that song, which some of you may or may not have heard, but anyway, enough hinting there. Todd started his own thing. I am ecstatic that has happened. Todd's a really creative guy, and we always jokingly refer to him as the tech guy, but jokingly or not, he is the tech guy. That is his being. He's always finagling and working on his guitars, redoing the electrical, redoing the bridge work, the hardware. Just, he's always doing that, but he's also, he's a bit of an electronics whiz. I mean, he's always tinkering on computers and changing things, and he's got a really strong electronics base. So, and I think through his exposure on our show, that he's gotten comfortable behind the mic, because he's never been the guy behind the mic. He's always the guy behind the guitar in a public setting. But now he's the guy behind the mic. So he just released his first episode, I guess, of his YouTube show, which is called Todd Geek's Tech Talk. Take a look for it on Facebook, also on YouTube. I don't have the links with me now, and since I'm recording this live on the road, can't exactly share it. But there will be definitely links to this. I mean, I've already shared it on the Meet the Geeks page and my own personal page as well. So anyway, you got to check it out. He's got a great way of explaining things. He's got a manner to him, and he's got a really easy to listen to voice. And he's providing some tips as it relates to creating your own podcast and using, I believe, a Behringer board. So check that out. It's really cool. So we're just kind of slowly expanding the reach of our geekdom out and making sure that we all got something out there. So really proud of the guy. Yeah. So that's Todd Geek's Tech Talk. Go check it out. So this morning, and then over the weekend, I finished this version of the edit for the first 2/3 of the book. And by 2/3, I don't know if I mean actually 2/3 of the book or more. This story is really broken into 3 parts. There's the beginning part, and then that part's basically an introduction to all the characters and kind of the plot points and what's going on. The second part is where the action, a fair amount of action takes place, where it's more suspenseful. There's more suspense going on in that part. And then the final book is the final part of the book, which ended up being the shortest part of the book, is happening. And for that section, it's short. It's really short, and my editor who had come in, he kind of noticed that, I think he said he liked the action that happened, but it seemed a bit like he was lacking something. And I do agree. I think the action sequence I wrote at the end, I would love to see that in a movie. I really, really spent time plotting out the visual of everything happening, and I think I've accurately displayed that visual using words of what's going on. And it's really exciting, and I actually took time to plot that action sequence out. So the writing lesson for today is that if you want to have action in your book, the reader needs to be able to see it. And if the reader needs to be able to see it, you need to be able to visualize what that action sequence goes like. If your action sequence is a fight scene, and you want it to be very visual, don't say they each threw a few punches at each other, but one of them got the upper hand. That's basically not giving any sort of drama or there's no meat. I guess I use that word often. There's no meat to the fight. There's no substance. It's just the fight happened. It seems inconsequential. It's almost like, why did you put that there? What is it leading to? What is it providing? What service is it offering to the reader? And if that action sequence is nothing but there was a flurry of blows and he got the upper hand, well, what does that actually mean? They fought. Okay, so you've established that they fought. You haven't established, was there any, was this just a scuffle where nobody really wins in the end? If that's the case, fine, that's the effect you're going for. But if you're trying to indicate that they had a fight and this guy won, was it a narrow win? Or was he dominant? Was the one person dominant over the other? Those sorts of things are actually important. And when you watch a movie and you watch a very good choreographed fight, there are stakes involved in that fight. There always is. There's, is this a fight because they're just mad at each other, and in the end, it's just, they both, someone wins, someone loses, but it doesn't really matter. And in the end, they scuffled and they all got, cuts and bruises from, getting hit in the face or whatever. Is that what's happening? Is that what the intent is? Or is this a fight scene where this is the last man standing or the last woman standing? Let's go with that, because I like being my Buffy. So if Buffy and all of her crew, her Scooby crew, as she calls them, are fighting. And then, the rest of them are taken out one by one by one, and she's the last woman standing. She's the last person standing. What does that mean? Does that mean that the fate of the universe is ultimately going to be decided in this fight? Are the stakes such that she doesn't have the option of failing? And then as the fight's taking place, she's taking hit after hit, and she's maybe getting a couple of good hits in, but she seems to be on a downward hill. She's going down the hill, and she's not winning the fight. She really needs to get that. She really needs victory, but she can't seem to muster the intelligence in the fight to be able to, figure out her foe's moves, or she's too angry in the fight and she's, fighting a little bit blindly and not really paying attention to the science of the fight, and that's why she's not getting the upper hand. Like, there's all those nuances in a fight that really matter. And then, say the fight kind of changes to, so she's taking her licks. She's given a couple of hits, but she's really ultimately failing, and it's the choreography of the fight is showing that, she is going to eventually lose. She's getting hit more often than she's hitting. But then there's a surge of confidence. Her steely will perseveres, and she gets one good hit in that staggers the foe, and it gives her an opening where she maybe takes a couple more hits, but now the tide of the battle has changed in her favor, and she's striking more than she's being struck. These are all little simple things, and I know violence isn't the answer to anything, but sometimes violence is the answer in the particular scene that you're trying to write, and to convey a sense of what's going on. So you really need to frame that action sequence, and what it means, and what it's for, and what it's meant to accomplish. So what I do when I think at this point I've written enough comic book stuff, I've drawn enough comic book stuff, and to be honest, I've played with enough action figures. I can plot and sequence a fight scene. I know that if someone is punching high at their opponent, and that person sidesteps, that punch, if it had a lot behind it, there's going to be follow through in that punch, that if they miss the target, they're going to take a step forward, slightly unbalanced. That gives an opening to what would have been the recipient of the blow to take advantage and perhaps strike an elbow to the head, or use that person's momentum against them and maybe push them so that they fall down. And based on how much weight they put behind that punch, they may go down to one knee, or they may go face flat. Visually in my head, I know when that punch is thrown. I know what it looks like. I know the angle of it. I know the velocity of the swing. I understand going into that fight what it looks like. And when I write it in detail, pronouncing the parts that matter. Just like you might do in an action movie when you're framing a sequence. You're going to show the parts visually. Your DOP is going to pull back and make sure he's focusing on the parts of the fight that matter. The fist almost missing might be the focus of the matter. So when you're writing an action sequence, even storyboard it out. Make sure you know how it's going to work and what the stakes are in that fight and where it's going to go and what you want to do with it, if that makes sense. Hopefully that does. So that final action sequence in my book, there are stakes to it. There is an emotional investment that leads into that fight as to how that fight needs to go, and the stakes involved. So in that particular fight, in the end, in the one fight in the end, it is very important that the hero team has confidence in what they're doing. There's a couple of missteps, but ultimately they have a plan, and if they carry forward with that plan, they will win this fight. But there's also stakes in it that they might lose this fight if they misstep at all. So action sequences are very important, and you can gloss them over in your first pass through on it, but when you're editing that scene in context of the rest of the story, be sure that you are taking the reader with you on this action sequence, that they're feeling that sense of adrenaline rush like you would when you're seeing a movie. Books have the ability, outside of a movie or anything like that, books have the ability to get into people's heads, and I think often people get tripped up on that action sequence because it's not a visual medium, or writing a book is not considered a visual medium. It's using your imagination. But if you are smart enough to direct what people are seeing, then writing is a visual medium. For me, it is. I'm able to describe exactly what's happening, but I'm also able to direct the reader's eyes and ears and senses to what is the focus. On the screen, it's a different way to do the same thing. But anyway, action sequences, very, very important. Make sure you plot them out. And like I said, use thumbnails, or draw out the action sequence. I know maybe you can't draw, and that's why you're a writer. That's fine. You can still stick figure the action sequences, and if you got to, if it's a fight scene or anything like that, don't hesitate. That's why I still have my action figures. My action figures help me visualize when I'm maybe stuck on what it is, and I might choreograph the fight with action figures and go, oh, okay, that's how that would look, or that's how that focus would work, or that's how that follow through would work on that particular punch, or whatever it is. It is really, really helpful to go through that, and set it up that way. Hope that's helpful. Yeah. So we will see you on the flip side.